Where were you for the historic Dean Wade game against the Celtics?
I was at the game.
Me
That's
too.
where I was.
And Jason, what else we got on the agenda today?
I got an update on Evan Mobley's ankle injury. It's not good news. JB Bickerstaff called me a mean name last night. We're going to have some fun with it.
We will definitely talk about that and much more on tonight's episode of the Ultimate Cavs Show. Ladies and gentlemen, Mikey McNuggets, Jason Lloyd, as always, joining you this week for the Ultimate Cavs Show. Jason, we were going to lead with a little film breakdown and discussion of Dean Wade's incredible fourth quarter performance against the Celtics last night, but instead we have some breaking news within the last 90 minutes here that you helped break regarding Evan Mobley's ankle injury. So what can you tell me and the good people of Cleveland and Cavaliers Nation about number 4 moving forward?
Well, you're not going to see him for a little while. The Mobley ankle injury is going to keep him out for a little while. The official wording that we landed on was an extended period of time. I know that's vague. That was by design. There's so much swelling in there right now. Doctors can't really get an official timeline on it until that swelling gets out of there. So I think a month is probably a safe estimation, somewhere around there, somewhere in that time frame. That's not anything that we're officially reporting. That's just for people wanting to know, well, what does an extended period of time look like? I think probably about a month seems pretty reasonable under the circumstances, which obviously puts them up against getting toward the end of the regular season. And, we've been talking about the two big lineup and trying to stagger their minutes. Well, that's not a problem anymore.
Yeah.
At least for the time being. And I don't know how much time they're actually going to have to sort through a rotation once he's back. It's been a tough year for Evan, man, all the way around with injuries.
Yeah, I said on UCSS today that before we knew how long the injury was going to be, I said a sprained ankle could be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. Who knows, maybe even longer. But I was hoping we'd get some answers and some clarity, some finality on what the Cavs' best lineups and best closing lineups would be during this stretch in March where they play good team after good team after good team after good team. So that come April, JB Bickerstaff kind of had a really good idea and a really clear picture of this is my best 5. This is how these two guys work together. And whether or not Mobley and Allen could coexist in a crunch time lineup. And it's just kind of frustrating from my standpoint that now I don't think we're going to be able to get those answers, because when he does return, whether that's the end of March, early April, there's only a few games left to kind of ramp him back up into things. And frankly, one thing with Evan Mobley is when he's on offense, I don't want him thinking. I just want him acting. Yeah. The more Evan thinks, a lot of times the worse the outcome is. And I've been through a sprained ankle before. I've had to play coming off a sprained ankle. And until you're 100% confident that it's back to being what it was prior to the injury, there's always that slight hesitation in the back of your mind that you may tweak it again. So Evan Mobley having to deal with that on top of all the other things he does within this offense, there's just not a lot of time to figure out what to do with those guys. And in Evan's case, this was going to be a big month for him, trying to prove he is one of those guys at the end of the game that needs to play. So we'll see, but not good news, especially with Donovan out. And that may not be as quick of an injury recovery as at first we were led to believe either.
Yeah, the thing that I keep stressing, the Cavs said they would reevaluate after 3 games. I think a lot of people assumed it was going to be just 3 games for Donovan. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. It was 3 games, basically a week. Give him the week and then reevaluate and see where he's at. And no Strus either. They're going to tip off here in about an hour. So not great news all the way around. And, one more point on this. The evidence is mounting that they're at their best with one of these dudes in the middle and 4 shooters around them. Like it's becoming clear.
Yeah.
And we can do shows on that in the off season about what you do moving forward with that. I wrote about it today before we figured out the Evan situation, that it's a weird little riddle for the Cavs, because no one will dispute that Evan and Jarrett are 2 of the best players on that team. But they're at their best with only one of them on the floor.
Fact.
So what do you do? And who do you pick? And it may lead to them having to have a conversation in the offseason about moving on from one of them. And I know which one it's going to be, and it's not going to be Evan Mobley, I don't think, if push comes to shove. And again, every time I talk to people around the league, all offseason, even into this season, they're at their best with Evan at the 5. I know the numbers may say differently, but people around the league who know the game believe it's Evan at the 5 and 4 shooters around him is when they're at their best. Now, JB said last night, we are at our best when Jarrett Allen is at his best. And Jarrett means a lot to this team. So I don't know how you untangle this. It's really kind of a weird spot to be in when two of your best players, and then you can have the same conversation about the backcourt of Donovan and Darius. But right now, when we're talking Evan and Jarrett, it's sort of weird that two of your best players on the team aren't necessarily making the best 5 on the floor. And that's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, let's talk about the two big lineups here just because it kind of goes hand in hand with Mobley. And I got some numbers for you, Jason. This was prior to last night's game. So this was before the Boston Celtics game. And these were the Cavs' net ratings with Allen on the court without Mobley. They're plus 12.6 in the net rating. With Mobley on the court without Allen, they had a plus 5.99 net rating. When they're both on the court together, a plus 4.6. There are some caveats to that. When they were on their 18-2 streak, when they were red hot, a lot of those games came against subpar competition with Allen on the court, Mobley on the sidelines, sitting out with his first injury. So there is a little bit of a caveat to it. Maybe the numbers aren't that drastic one way or another, but I've come to the conclusion, and I was pretty steadfast on it until, frankly, Sunday night, that the two bigs, Mobley and Allen, had to be in the closing lineup. Like, those are two of your 4 best players. No matter how you slice and dice it, you figure out a way to make those guys play. But the Knicks game in particular, not even what Dean Wade did last night, which we're going to break down in full effect coming up in a few minutes, but it was more in the Knicks game, and we showed it on the show, but this picture in particular, and you can see Evan Mobley in the corner up top here, and Darius Garland just didn't even take a look at him. And this was not the only possession. This is just the one still shot I pulled for the sake of this discussion. If Evan can't shoot threes and you could put 4 bodies in the paint, and I made a couple phone calls today to a couple of NBA assistant coaches asking, hey, if Evan's back and Isaac are back, would you guard him in the playoffs? And without even a second of hesitation, the answer goes, they got to make 3 or 4 first before we're going to guard them. So you can't play 3-on-5, 3-on-4, or 4-on-5, in prolonged stretches. So at this point, I was hard on the side of you got to play them, figure it out. Like, they're 2 of your 4 best players. After Sunday, I think I'm teetering towards one big right now. And at this point, in my opinion, it's Allen. It could be next year at Mobley when he's healthy, fully recovered. But coming off this ankle injury, coming off the second injury since December, I just think Allen gives you a better opportunity on both ends of the court. And the numbers with him and Donovan Mitchell together are through the roof. They've developed one of the best pick-and-roll chemistries in all of basketball, and I don't want to sacrifice that just to allow Evan Mobley to get the reps he probably needs to develop. It's kind of an unfortunate situation, in all honesty, for Evan. I actually feel bad for him in a sense, how this whole situation's kind of unfolded in front of him. It's led to wins. It's led to the Cavs being a better basketball team, but it certainly has stunted his growth and his, potential rise into the unicorn category he was tabbed on when he was drafted by the Cavaliers 3rd overall.
Yeah, I still think he's going to be a dominant player in this league for a really, really long time, but certainly, I don't know that he's progressed at the track that I thought that he would. We talked about that on the show the other day. And it goes back to when he first came back from the knee, and I said, I want him to shoot 150 to 175 3-pointers the rest of the way. Well, he wasn't on pace for that even before this. No. He got hot there for a few games where he started making some threes, and you thought, all right. And then that sort of went away. And the point I was trying to make with that was you have to find out if you can play these guys together or not. And the only way to find out is for him to shoot these threes and see if he'll make them. That's what the regular season is for, to figure out what your best postseason lineups are. And we have the answer now, and I tend to agree with you. I don't think you can play them together in a closing lineup at the end of games and not only because we didn't see the 150 to 175 threes, but because it just never became part of his game. Like, the whole point was I wanted to see if he could make that part of his game, make it a real weapon so that teams would have to come out on him. And clearly, that Knicks is proven. And by the way, Isaac was wide open in the other corner and nobody was guarding him either.
So, a little different with Isaac because his defender is in the help area, but
yes.
They're not locking onto him like they would a Sam Merrill or Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland in that sense. And you can see Sam Merrill on the top of your screen here. DiVincenzo not leaving his side even remotely in that scenario. Now, he wouldn't help because from the position he's in, but you can kind of see who they are willing to help off of, who they're willing not to guard at all, and who they're not willing to come off with whatsoever.
Right. So, and Evan, they just weren't going to pay any attention to him, which is why I wanted the 150, 175, 3 a game, 3.5 a game, something like that. If you can find the rhythm, if they start going in, teams will have to pay attention to it. Unfortunately, that never really developed. So now we're back to where we were, prior to the knee injury. That I just don't know. I tend to agree with you. I think it's probably one or the other, especially in key moments down the stretch. I don't know that it's both. And now we don't even have to worry about that for the next few weeks at least.
And it's good to have versatility. If you have to go 2 bigs, you can go 2 bigs. I mean, the numbers with both of them on the court together aren't terrible. They're not bad. It's just they're better, the numbers and the eye test, when one's on the bench and one's playing surrounded by 4 shooters. And, one of the complaints, or not, let me rephrase that. One of the reasons I thought you had to play both of them was you have 2 7-footers. I know neither one's technically 7 foot, but 2 legit bigs on the court together. You should dominate the glass. Mm-hmm. And we saw Chicago do that in reverse to Cleveland last Wednesday. However, when you actually look into the numbers, they're a better rebounding team when Dean Wade's on the floor than they are with any individual Cav not named Tristan Thompson. They grab 4.5% more defensive rebound when Dean Wade's at the 4 with either of the bigs than they do with the 2 bigs together, which kind of blew my mind. I wasn't expecting that. That was according to Second Spectrum Sports. And Dean Wade is in the 90s. Say it again.
That's a good transition.
It is, and we'll get there in a sec. But Dean Wade is one of the better positional rebounders in basketball. Now, he's not going to pull down crazy numbers. He had 8 rebounds last night, a couple big offensive rebounds, which we'll break down in a sec. But when you look at the sacrifice you get, in theory, from a rebounding aspect to enhance your shooting and spacing, I don't think the sacrifice of rebounding is actually anywhere near as big as you would think by subbing out an Evan Mobley or a Jared Allen for Dean Wade. At least the numbers don't back it up. I'm not 100% sure that passes the eye test theory yet, but the numbers back up that their rebounding is just fine with Dean Wade at the 4 and either one of the bigs at the 5, which I wouldn't have guessed before looking into that today.
Dean is very underrated, and that goes for me as well. I've noticed he's a much better defender this year than I ever gave him credit for in the past. I don't know if he's gotten better or if I just didn't notice it, but he's pretty good. Like, he could be a starter in this league on another team.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's a legit 6'9" too, by the way.
Yeah,
legit 6'9". He
could be playing big time minutes and carrying a starter's role on a lot of other teams, including probably this one. If JB wanted to reenact the 3 bigs that he had when Markkanen was here, Dean could be that small forward, that 6'9" small forward. I think. I mean, he's done it before.
Yeah. And
they even played him at center last night. So he's very versatile. Obviously a great shooter. We know that. And another one of those guys that they found on the margins and they've developed into a really nice rotational piece, which is what you have to do in this league, especially with where the Cavs are at with the first round pick situation and their lack of assets. You have to hit on these guys, and they've done a really nice job of developing Dean Wade.
And speaking of Dean Wade, we're going to talk about Dean Wade, break down some of his heroics in the 4th quarter, after a quick reminder that if you like the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, you'll love the Ultimate 216 Show with the Pearl on Wednesdays, the Ultimate Brown Show with G. Bush on Mondays and Fridays, and the Ultimate Guardian Show is launching here in just 3 weeks. We are close to finalizing a deal with not just one host, but 2 hosts that I promise you will pack a jam-packed Guardian Show coming to a TV, phone, tablet, whatever, near you soon. Also, you can always listen to us in podcast version as well, and we appreciate this support. All right, Jason, you ready to talk a little Dean Wade with a little film breakdown, thanks to the beautiful people at Tegna who have allowed us to finally use some footage in this capacity?
Yes.
Okay, before we do that, though, I just want to say, you were in the arena last night. I was there last night. We saw Max Strus go 5 for 5 from 3 last Tuesday. Then Dean Wade comes back this Tuesday. Are you smelling like a 40-point Amani Bates game next Tuesday? Like, what's up in the air on Tuesdays?
We will have to carry G. Bush in on a stretcher if Amani Bates goes for 40. on a Tuesday game. We'll have to carry him on a stretcher on Wednesday. He will just black out from the excitement.
Yeah, it was crazy. So Dean Wade in the fourth quarter, if you missed it, we'll break this down in a sec, had 20 points, was 7 of 7 from the floor, 5 of 5 from three, had 6 rebounds. Compare that to his numbers in the first 3 quarters where he had just 3 points, 1 of 4 shooting, 1 of 4 from three, 2 rebounds. And against the Celtics alone, how about that, Jason? He outscored the Celtics, the number 1 team in basketball, by himself in the fourth quarter. I would call it heroic, build the statue worthy performance from Dean Wade. And we'll break down the plays in one sec, but just real quick, on a scale of 1 to 10, how shocked were you that Dean Wade was the guy who did this to the Boston Celtics last night?
On a scale of 1 to 10, 32, his jersey number. Nobody saw that coming. And the one point I would make is this, the Cavs caught a lot of criticism last year for moving on from Kevin Love. And I get it. Like, in the moment, I get it. The optics of it were terrible. But the reality is they let Kevin go to Miami because of Dean Wade and because they thought, like, this is what they were going to get. This was the version of Dean that they were expecting to get. Now, they miscalculated that because he was out with a shoulder injury when he had just come back, actually, I guess. He had just come back from a shoulder injury when they made that move, and he just never got his rhythm back. I was told last year that, moving on from Kevin kind of messed with him a little bit. He told me last night it really wasn't that. It was really just the shoulder. He never really caught his rhythm after that. He had a sprained AC joint, missed 6 weeks, about 24 games, and he just wasn't the same player after that. So that was a big reason. I'm not saying they beat the Knicks if he plays better. It goes a lot longer than 5 games if he's playable, though.
Yeah.
They had no bigs that they could play off the bench in that series because Dean was just a mess, and he played a total of 11 minutes. And so their only bigs were Evan and Jarrett. So when you add a guy who can stretch the floor like that, who teams have to account for, sort of what we were just talking about in the last segment, it completely changes the way that, defenses guard you. And they didn't have to guard that many shooters on the Cavs last year. So this version of Dean is sort of a game changer. And I wrote, for today that I think he's their most important bench player because of what he does and when he's on the floor. He's got, I think, the 4th, if memory serves, the 4th highest plus minus of anybody on the roster. So obviously,
I'm surprised it's not higher on the list, to be honest with you. He always seems to have a positive net rating.
Yeah.
And a guy who, even if the starters aren't playing well, the groups that he's a part of are the ones that kind of bring them back into the game, which may play into just the further evidence that they play best with a shooting 4 next to a non-shooting 5.
Absolutely. I think Donovan, I know Donovan was number 1. I think Strus was 2. Jarrett was 3. And Dean was just a tick below Jarrett at 4. So higher than Darius on that list and higher than Evan on that list.
Crazy. Well, let's look at some plays. I got to click a few buttons here, so bear with me. This is a trial and error run here. But if we go to this, Jason, we go to this, and I play this, we should have video. All right. This is the first 3 Dean Wade hit yesterday in the fourth quarter, part of this kind of crazy fourth quarter he put on. And this one's nothing crazy. You got Luke Cornett guarding him. Little jab step. Once again, doing all the little things, the fundamentals. Gets the 7-footer to put his hand down, man down, 3 points. Nothing crazy on that one. Pretty basic NBA play. Let's go to the next one, though. There's a couple parts of this next one. It's a pick and roll dunk here from Wade. I want to point out 2 things here. A, the spacing on the court. If you look to the top of your screen, you'll see Drew Holiday guarding Sam Merrill. Now, that's important, and I'll get to that in one sec, but just keep in mind that is Sam Merrill on the top of your screen. Dean Wade setting a back pick and roll. The ball's not in his hands yet, but setting a screen for George Niang, who's being guarded by Jason Tatum. Now, we love George Niang. I'm telling you, if you guys could talk to anyone on the Cavs, there's no one you'd rather talk to than George Niang. He's the funniest dude in the locker room, the ultimate locker room guy. But with all due respect, he moves at the pace of a sloth. Like, his nickname's the minivan for a reason. So watch how long Dean holds this screen. I'll pause it once I get to the point. I'll let it play through, then I'll pause it on the second time. Watch how long he holds this screen to create a passing lane for Niang to find him on the pick and roll. Niang's going to come over here. A full second, drops it off for the dunk. Now, we're going to rewind this to the beginning. I got him spot shadowed here as it plays through, and I'll pause it as it comes through. He has enough time to roll with the opposite shoulder. You're taught in basketball to roll. The guy comes off your right shoulder, you roll, open up that shoulder. Well, Dean does a little reverse pivot, but it doesn't matter because the entire paint is wide open. Why? because Sam Merrill's in the corner and Drew Holiday can't leave Sam Merrill. That leads to a wide open, easy pass, two-handed flush for Dean Wade. Once again, the spacing created by Sam Merrill allows that to be possible. Let's go to the next three here from Dean Wade. He made 5 in the fourth quarter. I'm just going to highlight 3 of them. This one, in a kind of crunch time situation, they're down by 9 points, 5 minutes left. And Darius Garland's going to drive baseline. Dean Wade, I'm going to spot shadow here in a sec, is kind of floating around the top. Right in this moment, Darius Garland has started a little Euro step move. He's not going up with the shot with Derek White, who's already has 3 blocks in this game, and Peyton Pritchard standing right in front of him. So he's looking to kick out. But if you can see in between the 2 spot shadows, there's Drew Holiday just standing there. Drew Holiday, one of the best defenders in all of basketball. It's these little slight movements that don't show up in a box score that you can't really teach. It's kind of an inherent instinct feel. Watch him just kind of, Darius doesn't have a lane. I'm going to take 2 shuffles to my right, create a passing lane, catch and fire with confidence. Watch. It's just 2 little shuffles. It's a minute thing that you don't pick up necessarily in the moment. Boom, catch and fire, rise. And I'll play this thing again. Once Darius gets kind of stuck under the basket, it's kind of in no man's land. There's not a great angle to pass. Dean creates the angle for him to get out of, catches with confidence, lets it rip. This is the 4th 3 from Dean Wade. Darius drives, kind of loses it. Jared Allen. Now, keep an eye on the shot clock. 5 seconds, right, Jason?
Yep.
This point, you got to be confident. You got to let it fly. There's no hesitation. Jaylen Brown in no man's land. He's looking back. You got Dean Wade straight ahead. You got Niang in the corner. Pick or choose 2 shooters. Kicks it out to Wade. Immediately goes up with a second on the shot clock. And that is picture-perfect basketball. A little dangerous drive by Darius. I don't love the behind-the-back pass with 2.5 minutes left in a close game like that in traffic. He got bailed out here because Jared Allen found Dean Wade. And as Dean said, it was like throwing basketballs in a swimming pool. Yeah. On the game-winning putback dunk, here's Dean Wade as Darius Garland has it at the top of the key, Jason. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Dean Wade. But when I play this clip, this is some of the most atrocious, abysmal, horrific boxing out you have ever seen from a good basketball team. This is what it looks like in a YMCA league when it's 9-6 and you're playing a 15 and it's the 15th game of the night. Watch all 4 Celtics, really all 5, just let Dean mosey on behind him. Yep. Not a single person made an effort to block out. And that's the difference in simply winning and losing that game. It's not a great shot from Darius Garland. Shot clock's winding down. He tries to go through 2 defenders over Kristaps Porzingis. If either Tatum or Drew Holiday or Jaylen Brown even remotely put a body on Dean Wade, it's probably an easy rebound for Kristaps Porzingis. They get fouled, shooting free throws to win it. Instead, Dean Wade comes unimpeded to the basket. Once again, just watch it again here. I mean, literally unimpeded, a 2-handed putback to cement his historic rise to what I would call superstar fame in Cleveland. If they built a statue for him tomorrow, I'm not opposing it.
Let's tap the brakes on the statue, but that's good stuff, and that's what happens when you got someone with Mike's basketball brain breaking down plays. That's really good.
It just does the little thing, and it's, you keep saying the little things, or I keep saying the little things, and they don't. You have to kind of know what you're looking for in some senses. Tyvus does this in football all the time. Like a guy takes one wrong step in it from a defensive back position. I don't know what it is, but the way he creates alleys, he had another 3 last night. I didn't use this in the breakdown, where in transition, he was trailing Darius. And typically you're taught, all right, this is your lane, sprint down, fast break. Mm-hmm. Instead, he trailed him, and Darius knew exactly what was going to happen. Darius dumps it off to him, and he steps into a wide open 3 from the top of the key, buries it, one of his 5 threes on the night. And at the end of the day, I mean, he made every play they needed to win. If he doesn't score 20 points in the fourth quarter, Cleveland doesn't win that game. And also, while he was on the court, and this is part of the reason I don't think Joe Mazzulla is that great of a coach yet, Jason, in the fourth quarter, Boston, their offensive execution was atrocious. Yeah. In the third quarter, they were destroying the Cavs every time they switched a high pick and roll. And it was like, all right, guys, JV, you better adjust because they're going to keep switching Tatum onto Niang or Merrill or putting Jaylen Brown in the post on DG or one of their smaller backcourt players. And all of a sudden, they just went iso ball play after play after play. And Dean Wade, give him credit. He was guarding Jason Tatum for a majority of that fourth quarter. So on top of scoring 20 points himself, he was their primary stopper on Boston's number 1 option. Boston's
the most talented team in the East. To me, there's no question in my mind. They're the biggest, most athletic. I mean, they got wings galore. They're the most talented team. Their biggest question is their coach.
Yeah.
And if they don't make the finals, I think that's it for Joe Mazzulla. I'm a little surprised that Boston hasn't won yet with this group, but it's also a testament to how long it takes. This stuff takes time. Like, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were putting this thing together and figuring this out when LeBron was still here 6 years ago. So it doesn't happen overnight, which is, I think, an important lesson to remember when you talk about Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, and they're still young and they're still figuring it out and they're still making mistakes along the way. It's just the timeline feels sped up because of the Donovan situation here. But this stuff, it doesn't just happen in 1 or 2 years. There's a lot of growth involved in this. But Boston, now there's no excuse. They should make the finals. There
is a bit of a parallel between Cleveland and Boston in terms of their timelines because I didn't realize Tatum, this is his 8th year in the NBA. I was shocked they mentioned the broadcast, but they brought in Kyrie. And immediately those guys were like, all right, you're young up and comers. Here's your star. The Kyrie is Donovan in that sense.
Yep.
It didn't work out, but they still kept the parameters of the rest of the team in place to build upon. They decided, hey, Kyrie wasn't the missing piece we needed. We have the guys. They just need time.
Right.
Now we'll see how the Cavs situation with Donovan plays out. But, when they brought Donovan in, that obviously accelerated the timeline for everybody else, Darius and Evan specifically. And it's only year, 4 and 3 for those two?
For Darius, no, Darius has been in the league longer than that, hadn't he? Because he's already signed his extension.
So 5 and 3?
5 and 3, I think.
So they still got a couple more years before they're at the same point Boston is. But I'm just saying other teams have done similar things to what the Cavs did with Donovan, where they bring in a star thinking this is our time to attack. These guys are young. They're under contract. We have the cap space. And it doesn't always work out. So that's not necessarily a knock on, I think Kobe had to go make that move. You have a chance to get Donovan Mitchell. You make that move 100 out of 100 times. But it is interesting just when you look at the parallels, knowing how young the Celtics still are. Because that's the crazy part. Tatum's been in his 8th year. He's 26 years old. Jaylen Brown's 26 years old in his 7th year.
Yeah.
They're still a young team. They're entering their basketball primes right now.
Yep.
So patience is sometimes easier practiced than preached. Or easier preached than practiced. Excuse me. I had that backwards.
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, we have to address the elephant in the room here, Jason. And we're going to do that after a quick tease. Once again, as always, you can find the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show on Monday through Friday on our YouTube channel, the Ultimate 216 Show with Earl the Pearl. On Thursdays, Ultimate Browns, Monday and Friday with G. Bush, and the Ultimate Guardian Show is launching here in just a few weeks. We also have podcast versions of the show. If you cannot watch, and if you are watching today, we appreciate it, hit the like button. If you're not already a subscriber, hit the subscribe button. We'll do this once a week here throughout the rest of the season, ramp it up. Jason and I are now both credentialed media members. Jason has always been. I am now part of the Cavs Media Mafia. So you'll see us at the games, and it's been a lot of fun. And speaking of credential moments, Jason, and things of that nature here, we got to address the elephant in the room. So last night at the press conference, or the pregame press conference, you asked JB Bickerstaff a question. And I got to switch the background so we can play this correctly. But you asked JB Bickerstaff a question, and this is his answer. Listen very closely, ladies and gentlemen.
Huh? Well, you're an asshole, so everybody. My bad.
We'll let it play one more time. And for one more time, in case you missed that, emphasis on JB calling Jason an asshole.
Huh? Well, you're an asshole, so everybody. My bad.
I'm not sure I've seen a drop the mic moment to end a pregame presser quite like that before, Jason. But it certainly was eye-opening as someone who's only been to a few of those now. And JB did it in good spirit. It was all in good fun. The question you asked here, the floor is yours. The floor is yours.
Well, shout out, thanks to Daryl Ryder from 92.3 for sending me the clip. Daryl was cackling at that and loved it. And the joke I made was everybody in the room had been waiting for somebody to call me an asshole to my face. I'm sure they've been saying it for 20 years behind my back. It's the first time they said it to my face. Because everybody in the room was like, well, you're not wrong. But, it's funny because I think I've mentioned this in passing a couple of times, but, JB and I have a very unique relationship. We're not terribly close by any means, but it was funny because when he first got here, when he first came to Cleveland, I got an email. My son was little, it was going back quite a few years. He's a little guy, and he was playing co-ed soccer. And my kids aren't really soccer players, but I got an email from a Nikki Bickerstaff, and I was like, well, that's an odd last name. That's not very common. And I'm reading the email, and it says, I'm your child's soccer coach. Looking forward to a fun year. Grew up playing soccer. Love the sport, blah, 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 blah. My family and I just moved here from Memphis. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. What are the odds of this? So I get to the first game, and sure enough, there's JB sitting there on the sideline. And I covered the NBA for 10 years. He was an interim coach in Houston when I was on the beat. He was in Memphis briefly. So our paths have crossed, but certainly nothing to the point where he would have any idea who I am. So I sat down next to him at the first soccer game and was like, well, let's get this over with because this is going to be a little weird. and so because of that, and that was when they first came to town when he was an assistant under John Beeline. So we've just always had a little bit of a different type relationship. So I cracked up last night. I thought it was hysterical.
It was very funny. I actually thought the responses to the tweets of people who weren't there being like, oh, Jason deserved that without understanding any context. And granted, you probably do deserve it. Like, let's be honest.
That's fine.
Actually, I'm going to rephrase that. You do deserve it. Like, you definitely, knowing what I know, definitely have some.
Believe me, there are a lot of people in the Cavs organization who probably gave him a backslap and an attaboy for calling me an ass.
I'm not going to say who laughed the hardest, but I'll tell you, it was not one of the people facing JB. I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. There was someone else facing us who got the hardest laugh out of that. But it was a really funny moment. And, I don't want to say you sparked the win there, Jason, but I'm not sure JB's ever laughed walking out of a pregame presser like that, which may have inspired him to let loose and play Dean Wade for 12 minutes in the fourth quarter, which then inspired the heroic fourth quarter performance we saw. So I'm not saying you're the reason, you're the one to thank for what happened last night, but I'm also saying you definitely aren't the reason.
Well, you're welcome, Cleveland. Yeah, I'll take full credit for that one. Thank you.
I also want to shout out my boy Josh Estes, who warms up Dean Wade every game. And I saw him before I played basketball with Josh, and I was like, hey, how'd Dean look tonight? He goes, not his best warm-up. Josh, just saying, brother, maybe he's got to miss one or two now in warm-ups from now on to get that kind of performance there in the game.
Just goes to show you, man, some pitchers have their worst bullpen of the year and go out and throw a gem. So warm-ups doesn't always necessarily equate to how the night's going to go.
Yeah, I was always superstitious like that in high school specifically. College, I didn't play unless catastrophe happened or we needed a three. So in college didn't matter, but in high school, if I didn't make a couple, the majority of my shots in warmups or it didn't feel good, I just mentally I was like, this is gonna be a bad game. And sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. It probably doesn't actually make a difference once it starts, but the mental aspect of being locked in beforehand. I also saw when Luka was here last week, I was talking to their PR guy who I know from Texas.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my goodness, Luka's missing so many shots in warmups. And I was like, oh, that's a good thing. He goes, well, the last time he did that, he scored 74 on the Hawks. So I don't know if it's a good thing. So I'm just never going to look at pregame warmups as an indicator of actual game performance.
It's like trying to look at Summer League and debating who's going to be a good NBA player, not based on Summer League.
You never know. All right, Jason, that's going to wrap it up for the Ultimate Cavs Show, week 5 or 6. We have as many shows as Dean Wade had threes last night in the fourth quarter. Make sure you guys check us out on YouTube. We appreciate everyone tuning in, and we will see y'all tomorrow on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Peace.
See ya.